Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you. Now, just imagine this. You're applying to a top university along with thousands of brilliant students who all have excellent grades, high test scores, and very good activities. The admissions team is looking at your application and suddenly they pause because they see something different. A research paper which you have written and published. Now, that moment of pause can make all the difference. Now, in today's session, we will give you a simple and clear picture of how students of your age are exploring research, getting it published, and building skills that stay with them for life. Good evening, everyone. Once again, a very warm welcome to all our students, parents, and educators who have joined us from different parts of the world. My name is Abhishek, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. Now, before we get started, a very quick introduction to my panelist. So, today the session would be taken by Mr. Vivek Bhandari, who is the founder and chief mentor at EZScholar. He is joining us from Luxembourg, and he holds a BTech degree from IIT Delhi and an MBA from IIM Calcutta. Now, before we start off with this session, a very quick introduction about EZScholar, who we are and what we do. So we help high school and college students build strong profiles and create strategic plans for admission to leading universities across the globe, including Ivy Leagues, Oxford, Cambridge, and more. A very quick, I would say, suggestion for all the students and parents. We will be taking your questions towards the end. So if you have any questions, please make a note of it and you can feel free to submit it in the chat or the Q&A section. Now with this, I hand it over to Vivek to take you further through his presentation. Welcome, Vivek.
Hello, thank you, Abhishek, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I see that there are students and parents from different parts of the world. I see a number of people from some schools in India. I can also see some students from the US. So whichever part of the world you're in, thanks for joining us today. And a little bit about me and why we are in this field of research papers and college prep. So I completed my mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi in 1998. And after that, I did my master's from IIM Calcutta. And most of my career, I worked in banking and financial services. For some reason, research stayed with me. And the primary reason is when I was in my fourth year at IIT Delhi, we had to do a BTech project, which was a 2-semester project. It was a 10 credit course, which we had. It was a compulsory course. You had to do that and pass
Vivek,
that. Yes, Abhishek.
sorry for interrupting. Your voice is a little low. If you can speak a bit louder or maybe closer
Okay.
to the microphone.
Hopefully, it's better now.
Yes, better.
Okay. So in my fourth year, when we were doing the BTech project, we chose a project in which we had to test the strength of welded joints. And my BTech partner and I, we spent countless hours in the workshop, first welding plates together, and after that taking out those joints and then creating samples out of that for testing. Now, towards the end of the project, in the last 1 month, we realized that we had about 1/5 the number of samples we needed to accomplish what we had wanted to do. So we went to our BTech guide. We told him that, okay, sir, we made a mistake. We didn't realize how big this project was and how much work was required. So long story short, our project guide was quite understanding and he took pity on us for the fact that we had worked so hard and we looked so dirty from working in the workshop all the time. And we completed our BTech project. We successfully passed. But I think one thing that stayed with me is the importance of research and how you need to plan when you're embarking upon a short or a medium term project where you have to do a lot of work and the final analysis that you have to do, it depends a lot upon what kind of research design you have made, what kind of statistical analysis you want to do. And that's directly relevant to how you can come up with the results that you're trying to find. Anyhow, so right before COVID is when we started the research program. And in our first cohort, not surprisingly, most of the students were actually children of my batchmates from 1998, or maybe seniors and juniors, so they're kids. And one of our first students was a brilliant student from Jaipur. Great marks in his grade 10th, great marks in grade 11th, fantastic SAT score. And he was looking for a research paper in astrophysics. So we identified a great professor, and Mehul worked with the professor on a research paper in astrophysics. And as luck would have it, Mehul made it to Caltech. I think that was fantastic. It was a moment of truth that despite, well, Mehul was a brilliant student to start out with, first of all. But this research paper also helped in terms of providing that something extra that you could show on his profile. And he could submit the paper, or he could submit what he did as a part of his application. So that's where we started. And it's been several years since then. We have had students who have made it to all the top universities in the world, including Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial College, uh, all the Ivy Leagues. And I think we have realized over the years the difference that research can make to your learning, your curiosity, as well as your university application. So that's the objective of the session today. We will talk about research papers. How can you use research to demonstrate your intellectual vitality or your curiosity? Learn some new skills and then demonstrate those in your admission applications. So that's about us. Uh, I guess this is about research papers and other services that we do. Let's talk about the universities and why research is important for them. So on this page, you see some of the top universities in the US. And in the first column, you see the skills that they're looking for when they evaluate your application. MIT, for example, they want hands-on building experience. They want to see people with creativity. They want to see people who are collaborative, taking initiative, and calculated risks. Princeton, for example, also looks at spirit of service, leadership, potential for impact, and intellectual curiosity. Harvard looks for curiosity beyond academics, leadership and initiatives, commitment to service and community. UPenn looks for interdisciplinary mindset, pragmatic, pre-professional ambition, curious, social impact, and engagement. Similarly, Cornell looks for doing mentality, means people who want to roll up their sleeves and get things done. They look for intellectual breadth and specificity and commitment to public engagement. The common thing here is curiosity, wanting to see people who want to do things, people who are curious beyond academics, people who want to take initiative. And this is what research can help you demonstrate in your applications. Next slide. Similarly, some other top US universities. You have Columbia, Brown, Stanford, Berkeley, Georgia Institute of Technology over here. And you will note that all these universities, apart from demanding great grades and good SAT scores, also want people who are intellectually rigorous, curious. They may have different terminology. Stanford may call it intellectual vitality. Somebody else may call it innovative and collaborative. Somebody else may call it intellectually rigorous. But in the end, they're looking for people who are curious, who like to explore topics beyond their books, who are passionate about the subject, and who want to take initiative and get things done. And this is where research papers and a good research paper help you in standing out. Okay, next slide. One more interesting thing, a few years ago when we started, at that point of time, research used to be slightly less common. Over the years, we have seen research become a crucial part of the college applications. So research is no longer regarded as extra. It is a co-curricular or a super-curricular activity integral to a student's education. Now, in the previous slide, in the previous two slides, I spoke about some of the top US universities. Research is even more important if you're looking at top UK universities like Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial College, or LSE. And the reason for that is that in UK applications, you can't really talk about your extracurriculars. So if you have leadership experience or if you have sports, that is not directly relevant. However, if you have done research paper in biology and you're interested in medicine, or if you have done research paper in physics and you're interested in mechanical engineering or some other form of engineering, it's very useful because you're able to talk about that in your statement of purpose. So essentially in the last two and this slide, what I wanted to cover was that why is research important? It is important from a perspective of your learning, and it is also important from a perspective when you're applying to the top universities in the world in terms of demonstrating your intellectual curiosity, your passion, and your interest in the subject. Next slide. Let's talk about some of the university prompts and how they are directly relevant to research papers and research experience that students may have. For example, Columbia University directly asks in its applications, have you completed research with a faculty member, advisor, or a mentor in academic discipline, such as science, engineering, humanities, social science, languages, or the academic interests? Similarly, Stanford University asks a question. They say that the Stanford community is deeply curious and driven to learn in and out of the classroom. Reflect on an idea or experience that makes you genuinely excited about learning. A research paper or a good research project plays perfectly into this prompt. Similarly, Caltech, they have a question. Do you plan to submit a research project to Caltech? And they also ask you, please share two STEM related experiences. I believe with these examples, it would be clear how research directly helps or how strong projects directly help in terms of answering these questions and showing your curiosity, your passion, as well as your dedication to the subject. Next slide. Some fun facts about admissions. So MIT in 2024, they received a large number of applications and had 4.5% admit rate. Now, if you look at international students, the admit rate would be even lower than this. So suffice to say that from a pool of fairly qualified, highly qualified applicants, only 4.5 or maybe 4 out of 100 are admitted. The statistics are similar for other top universities as well. Oxford received 23,000 plus applications for admissions to fall 2024, and only 7% were admitted. Now, this 7% is a combined number which includes UK and international. If you're looking for international students, the admit rate would be substantially lower than this. Similarly, chances of large scholarship at a top US university is quite low. So it is important to differentiate your profile if you're looking for scholarships or if you're looking at admissions to top universities. Research experience boosts your admission chances by multiple times, and more than 3/4 of the universities now rate demonstrated interest in the field through research or other initiatives as crucial in the admission decision. And it's not surprising if you look at the values that they're looking for, research really works well in terms of demonstrating number of those values. That is for the US. And if you look at UK, if you're looking at any of the top UK universities, you can easily use your research experiences in your statement of purpose, which you really can't do with sports the sports that doesn't directly work into the SOP. But let's say if you're interested in economics, for example, and if you've done a great research paper on financial markets, or if you've done a great research paper on, let's say, a development of economies in India or in Africa, that works really well to demonstrate your interest in the subject. Next slide. So what will we cover in this presentation today? So first of all, There are several myths about research papers which we'll try to clarify in this session. Some of the myths are only college or PhD students can do research. Research is only for science students. I don't know enough to start a research paper. I need to figure out my topic on my own, and I need to be a topper to publish a research paper. So by the end of the presentation, we will try to answer all these questions and provide clarity on how students can work on research papers and try to publish high quality papers that can A, help them learn new skills, and B, also help them in their objective of university admissions. Next slide. So first of all, what is research? Research is a systematic investigation with the objective to discover new knowledge and deepen the understanding of the world around us. It involves asking questions, gathering evidence, and drawing conclusions based on evidence. I think that's straightforward. Next slide. And why research? So research helps develop critical thinking, problem solving, and analytical skills, which are essential for success in both research or in careers in the industry. It's also a unique opportunity for high school students to engage in scientific inquiry, pursue their interests, and contribute to existing knowledge. So it is for these reasons that research is considered to be important. Next slide. That brings us to what are the type of research and what kind of a project should someone pursue. So at a high level, there are two types of research that a person can do. There is primary research, which means conducting experiments, collecting data, and then drawing your conclusions based on that data. And then there is secondary research, in which you use the research that others have done or existing research to conduct a literature review and to draw conclusions based on that literature review. Normally, in any project, whether it's secondary research or primary research, you will always have some component of secondary research. So for example, going back to my BTech project, if we were analyzing the strength of welded joints, the starting point would have been to identify existing research work, existing projects in that field, and to see what work has already been done, and then to design your experiments after that. So even in a primary research project, you will always have components of secondary research. So at a high level, this is what primary and secondary research mean. And I think this brings the obvious question, what is better, whether it's primary research or it's a secondary research? Now, that's a nuanced question, and it depends really upon the subject that you're conducting the research in. Certain topics, certain subjects yield themselves better to primary research. For example, if you're trying to do research on psychology of buyers who are trying to buy an iPhone, primary research may be better because you have the ability to administer surveys. You could probably conduct surveys and see the buyer behavior. If you want to do primary research on, let's say, psychology of teenagers, you may be able to administer questionnaires to your friends or your classmates. So in that project, primary research may work well. Primary research in some cases may also require access to, let's say, laboratories. So if your school permits you to use a laboratory, or if you have access to some lab somewhere, that could also be helpful for certain types of primary research. In some cases, for example, if you're doing something in astrophysics, it is very difficult to get access to a lab or a, let's say, astronomy lab where you have a telescope and you have direct access to collect the data. So that's where secondary research will be more useful. That's where you can use existing data sets. You can use the data collected by, let's say, the James Hubble or the NASA laboratories, and which is available publicly to do your research. Secondary research is also useful, at least from a high school student perspective, for any projects related to medicine, or health, because it is very unlikely that you will get access to a hospital where you can collect actual patient data. For college students, it is somewhat different because they may have access to certain labs, or they might have access to certain places where they could use the patient data. So it's a nuanced question which depends upon what kind of project you want to do, what kind of facilities do you have access to. And one thing is sure, you could write great papers with primary research, and you could similarly write great papers with secondary research. Next slide. On this slide, there are some examples of recently published papers by our students. The first one that you see on the left, this is aerodynamic review of the 2010 McLaren Mercedes rear wing. So this project was done by a student, Keshav, who was based out of London. And Keshav had a keen interest in aeronautical engineering and mechanical engineering. So no surprise, that led to his project. It's a fairly complex project which he did. And again, Keshav is a great student to start out with. And he worked on an excellent paper under a fantastic mentor with a master's and PhD from Oxford. Keshav conducted some experiments on this using CFD, which is computational fluid dynamics, to understand how the air which is flowing around that wing, how does that air flow and what does it do to the pressure and the downward force exerted by the wing in keeping the car stable. Keshav got through to Cambridge, Imperial, and to Georgia Tech. And last month, he has joined Georgia Tech for his engineering. The second project on the right side, that is effect of Christmas on cryptocurrency market. So this was done by a student from Middle East. He is currently in his grade 11. And this was to analyze the effect of Christmas on prices of cryptocurrencies. So this is primarily a data science project, and again, excellent project. And these are all published projects which are published in various international journals. So I'm sure Abhishek will share the brochure with you, which contains links to all these published papers. And there, I would encourage students and parents to take a look at those, because that will give you an idea of the kind of work you want to do. Next slide. Okay, so couple of other projects. So exoplanet detection using machine learning. So this is primarily a machine learning project which is focused on astrophysics. Similarly, another project on economics, how government corruption impacts the real economy. So these are all students across the world who have done these projects and published their papers in different subjects. And importantly, this helps them differentiate their profile in front of the most competitive universities in the world. Okay, next slide. So these are some examples of research papers where the projects get published. And I think the question here would be, how do you decide which journal or which journal to go to? So as you see, these are projects in different subjects. So for example, the effect of Christmas on cryptocurrency market. So that's a data science and a economics, finance kind of a project. So this was published in a journal called IJSR. Similarly, an aerodynamic review of the 2010 Mercedes McLaren that was published in a different journal called the IRJ Mets. So depending on the subject and the topic of your paper, that's how our team identifies what are the right journals where you should look at those papers. And certain journals might be good for psychology, certain journals might be good for economics, certain other journals might be more suitable for computer science or AI and so on. Next slide. Let me talk about what are the different subjects that students can work upon. At a high level, most of our students work on physics, biology, computer science, economics, psychology, and chemistry. This is at a high level. However, when a student comes to us, we ask them to think a little bit more about what specifically do they want to do in physics. Magnetism is also physics. Quantum physics is also physics. Mechanics is also physics. And aerodynamics is also physics. But based on what you're interested in, you have to be a little more specific. Similarly, if you think about biology, molecular biology is also biology, genetics is also biology, plant botany is also biology, and biotechnology is also biology. And this is important because the mentors that our students work with are professors or postdoctoral researchers who specialize in a particular topic within that subject, and they have been working on that topic for a number of years. So it is the best if a student says that, okay, I'm interested in a project in genetics, for example, or somebody is interested in a project in, let's say, data science, where they want to understand, they want to build a predictive model to forecast the price of Bitcoin. Or, for example, you want to do a project in biochemistry where you want to understand the effect of enzymes. So initially, it is about identifying some topic or topics of your interest. And then we look at the mentors. We have a number of mentors, mostly from EU and UK, who would be specializing in some of those topics within the overall subject. So based on your interest and based on the mentor specialization, that's how our team identifies who are the right mentors that students should talk to, and then decide the scope of the project and move forward. Next slide. So the next question, how to choose a research topic? I think I covered a little bit of this in the previous slide, but it starts with what is the subject that excites you the most? And then what is the real world problem that is of interest? And then you combine both of them to generate a research idea. I think this is something which helps you explore something which is in the subject of your choice and which is trying to solve something which is occurring in the world around you at the current time. So for example, somebody who's interested in computer science and has an interest in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity could create a project on detecting phishing websites using machine learning algorithms. This is just one idea. This is how you can combine your passion for a subject along with a real world problem around you that you notice to come up with an excellent topic which is relevant to solving something or to making our world a better place. Next slide. So some common mistakes when students choose a research topic and how to think about a research topic so that you can avoid those mistakes. So the first one is choosing a very generic or vague topic. Actually, this is probably very important because when you start upon a project, it is important for you to be clear about what you want to accomplish. If you simply say climate change, it could mean many things. Whereas if you say research the impact of rising sea levels on coastal cities in India, yeah, now you've got something more specific which you can then work on. The second part is not conducting a literature review. This is also a common mistake because many students, they're so excited to jump upon their research that they may start immediately trying to conduct an experiment. And as I mentioned in the example at the beginning of the call, that's what we did in our BTech project. We immediately launched into welding metal plates and creating samples. That was not the best thing. So conducting a full-fledged literature review, understanding what has already been done is crucial. The third thing is focusing only on results and not methodology. So this is a crucial fault in research. So when you're doing research, it is not just the results which are important. How have you come to those results? What is the methodology did you follow? Is it correct? Is that methodology, can you based on that conclude that those results will hold? So that is very important. The next thing is not planning the timeline well. Again, crucial point. Because if you don't understand all the things that will need to be done to make your project successful, you could work on it for 3, 4 months and then figure out that, okay, you will not accomplish what you set out to do. And then last and the most important point, you have to get your research work approved by others. It could be through a professor, it could be through peers, etc., in order to ensure that you're doing high quality work that can then be published and that can add value to your learning as well as your resume. Okay. Few more things to keep in mind as you embark upon your research project. First of all, identify a project which is the most suitable for you. We spoke about primary research versus secondary research in the previous slides. So this is actually very important because based on the subject and the topic and the resources available to you, you have to choose what is it that you can do in the time available. Now, I understand most of the students on this call are high school students. So what this means is you have a lot of other things going on. You have your school exams, which you have to get good grades in. That is crucial for admissions. Depending on where you're applying for, you may be appearing for SAT, you may be appearing for ACT, or you may be appearing for other tests in the UK. So there are a number of things that you are doing. You might be working on other activities, etc., competitions. So identify what is the time available to you to conduct that research, what is the time frame in which you want to finish it, and then suitably define a project which you can complete in that time frame. Because what you don't want to do is create an overly ambitious project and then instead of finishing it in 3 months, it never gets finished. That's actually the worst case outcome. So having the right scope of project and for you having reasonable time in which you can complete that project is crucial for your goals. The second thing is understand the time and resources available. Again, I think this is a crucial thing. For example, many of the students who work with us are college students who are already studying in their bachelor's, either in India or in US or in UK, and who are looking for a research paper for their master's project. So in case of those students, the time that they may have available is somewhat more, and the knowledge they have of the subject and the access to laboratories that they have is also a lot more. Similarly, there could be a PhD student who is working on his PhD thesis. That student will probably have a lot of time, and that student will probably have access to a lot more resources and laboratories, which a high school student will not have. So second point, B, understanding the time and resources available is crucial when you decide what should be the scope of project and what you want to accomplish. Then the other things are discuss with your research guide to understand the scope. How do you want to conduct the experiment? What can you do? Equally importantly, what can you not do in the current project? And then finalizing your paper and submitting it for publication. With high quality papers, if you submit it, different journals take different time. Some journals may uh, publish it within 3, 4 weeks. Some other journals have submission deadlines which are once in a year or twice in a year. So there it takes longer. So depending on what journal you are targeting and depending on what are your timelines, you can decide what are the best journals to submit your papers to. Okay, next slide. On this slide, I will talk a little bit about our research program at EZScholar and how does it work with a mentor. So, as I said earlier, if a student comes to us and says that, okay, I want to do a research paper in, for example, physics. So we will ask them to be a little more specific that what exactly would you like to do within physics? So once we get that idea, let's say the student is interested in aerospace engineering, for example. So they might choose to do a project which is similar to what Keshav did, which could be exploring the shape of the rear wing for a Formula One car. Similarly, somebody can explore the shape of the wing for a fighter plane and understanding what it means in terms of the downward thrust and the aerodynamics of that particular plane. Now, again, when I say fighter plane, one has to be careful because you may not have enough data available publicly for a fighter plane. So that's where the scope of the project, what you can do, is important. So once we understand what is the project you want to do, we would identify the right mentors who specialize in that field, and we share the resumes of those mentors with the student. The student also goes through the resumes. Those resumes also talk about the mentor's own research work. What do they specialize in? And after that, once the student and the parents have gone through those, we set up a meeting with the mentor. This is the initial 30-minute meeting. This helps the student talk about what they want to do. This also helps the mentor to weigh in and tell them what can be done, what cannot be done. And assuming that the decision is to go forward, the project starts. After that, the student meets the mentor once in a week over a period of 10 to 12 weeks. The objective is that in these 12 weeks, the mentor will help the student come up with a paper which can then be submitted for publication. Now, these are not lecture sessions where the mentor will teach you all the concepts of the topic. That's why we ask you to think about what is it that you want to work upon, because if you have some basic idea of that topic, that will make your research more fruitful. However, the mentor will definitely share with you the other research that has been done on that subject. If there are certain concepts where you need clarification, they will definitely help you. But these are not lecture sessions, because if this was to be a lecture session, you will not be successful completing that research in that time frame. So that's why selection of the topic is important, and you need to have some grounding in that subject. And over the last year, we have had a very high publish rate for our papers. And I think the main reason for that is at the initial stage, when the students decide the project with the mentor, we're quite strict about deciding the scope of the project at that time. And I think that's what leads to success, because as a high school student or as a college student, there is a certain amount of time and you want to complete your paper in that time and move on and do the other things that you want to do. Okay, next slide. So I do see a number of questions, and I know that Abhishek is collecting the questions and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. So please keep on submitting any questions you want through the chat, and we'll take those up in a few minutes. So these are some of the profiles of the mentors who work with us. As I said, these mentors are either professors or postdoctoral researchers in the UK or in the EU. We have a few professors in the US also, but we find that from a research perspective and also from a time difference perspective, the professors in the UK and EU, they probably work best with most of our students. And these are all expert researchers who have done their PhDs from top-notch universities, and who are either professors, so they're either teaching full-time or they're conducting research in a particular topic. And that is what makes them so effective as mentors. Okay, thank you, Abhishek. Next slide. So on this slide, we talk about the advantage that EZScholar provides to students in their research papers and building a compelling profile using research. The most important point is one-on-one sessions by professors and postdoctoral researchers from top-notch institutions. That's one. The second thing is flexibility to choose research topics of your choice. So this is something which also makes it very relevant, because if you have an interest in a particular topic, you can conduct research on that. And for many students, they might be wanting to position themselves in a certain way, having a research interest in a particular niche, and our program allows you to do that. The third thing is our program is available round the year. This is because the students work one-on-one with mentors, so they can choose to do the program in the summer or in the fall or in the winter or in the spring. High quality papers are published in international journals. And as I said, sometimes a student may have a preference, they want to publish their paper in a particular journal. Now, Some journals might take 4 or 5 months to publish it. So maybe if you're a class 10 student or a class 11 student, you might have more flexibility in deciding the journal compared to a class 12 student who will be applying in the current cycle. So I think that those are all tactical decisions, and our team helps you take those decisions to make sure that you publish your paper in a well-reputed international journal and you have it available at the time of your applications. Also, depending on how you have worked with the professor, if you have attended the classes, if you have done good work in your paper, usually the professors are happy to award a letter of recommendation to the student. So those are some of the benefits of our program. Next slide. On this slide, you will see some of the students who have worked with us in the last few years, and you will see that they're students who have made it to pretty much all the top universities in the world. And we're very proud of this sheet. We're very proud of the work that our students have done. And we're proud of two things. We are proud of the quality of work that they have done. That's one. And we're also proud of the results that they secured in terms of getting that acknowledgement through their university applications. Next slide. Okay, I'll hand it back to Abhishek. Abhishek, thank you.
Thank you, Vic. So I already see a lot of questions have been asked by our audience today. So I'll start taking the questions. So, okay. So the first question is, what is the research first step?
What is the research first step? So I think it depends on where the student is currently. The research first step is deciding a subject and a topic. And let me try to explain this. So for example, we normally tell students that they should try to write their first paper, a formal research paper, at the end of class 10th. And the reason we say this is you may not have acquired enough knowledge in the subject of your choice or in the topic by that time. So the first step is deciding a subject and a topic and making sure you have some foundational knowledge in that topic. So maybe for a class 9 student, if they want to conduct research in, let's say, astrophysics, they may not have that knowledge. So probably the first step for them would be doing certain courses, doing certain online courses on Coursera, maybe watching a few videos, building up their knowledge. And then once they have reached that threshold, then deciding a subject and a topic. So I think that's the first step is different depending on where the student is. And but that's the first step, getting to a subject and a topic.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, if we research outside our field of study, then will it still help in making my resume or application better?
So that's a good question. Normally, it depends on what other research work have you done. Because, for example, if you've already done a couple of papers, let's say your interest is in biology, and you've done a couple of papers in biology. Now you want to do a third paper in political science or economics to show a broad range of interests, it will probably work. But if your primary interest is in biology and you're doing your first paper in political science, it will probably be less useful. I mean, let's think about it. When you answer your question, let's say when you're applying for UK and you write your statement of purpose, it will be difficult for you to link your interest in the subject and what you want to do to political science. Similarly, when you apply to USA, you saw all the prompts that were there. When you have to show your intellectual curiosity or your passion for your subject, it will be difficult for you to answer those questions using this paper. So normally, your first couple of papers should be in your subject. If beyond that you want to explore your interests elsewhere, that is also, I mean, that can work. But if you're looking at your first paper, it should be aligned with your subject. That is probably in your best interest.
Okay, thank you, Vivek. Moving on to the next question, can research be done without PhD?
Can research be done without PhD? Absolutely. See, if you study in any college, any university, actually, if you look at the traditional Indian universities, for the bachelors, there may not be much research over there. But if you look at any of the newer Indian universities, research is a component. You have to work on those. If you look at IITs or if you look at engineering colleges, you have to do research as a part of your BTech project. In most of the, pretty much all of the places where you do masters, you have to do research over there in your masters. So definitely in most of the undergraduate studies, which means your bachelor's, in all of your masters, there is always research. And if a student is in a curriculum in high school, if they're in the IB, the International Baccalaureate, they have to do something called as the extended essay, which is actually a research paper. So yes, definitely a lot of students do research way before they may get to PhD.
Okay, thank you. Uh, so the next question is, so basically one of the student wants to have your thoughts on the idea of the project. So the idea is vehicle to vehicle communication, so that if one applies the brakes, the car behind will get a notification regarding the brakes applied, reducing the chance of an accident.
So I think this is something which I guess Tesla and others are trying to develop in terms of having fully autonomous vehicles which are communicating with each other. Now, it's an emerging field. Now, I'm not sure what your focus of the research will be. Will you try? There are two, three ways to approach this research. Maybe you will try to design three, four cars, and you may try to set up let's say, a sandbox in which you have three, four vehicles, and you may want them to coordinate. If one of them has to suddenly brake or suddenly accelerate, the others will respond accordingly. So you could approach it from an AI perspective, where you have these vehicles communicating with each other and uh, communicating with each other and trying to prove the concept. That could be one approach. In fact, I have seen one project here in a science competition in Luxembourg, where one student created those three vehicles, small cars, and they were trying to avoid collision with each other while they were working on they were moving around in that sandbox. The thing is, if you want to do secondary research on this topic, there may not be as much. This is a fairly complex topic. This is a fairly complex branch within computer science. And depending on what your knowledge is of these kind of bots, it may be a good topic, but it depends on where your starting point is for this research.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, I already see a lot of specific questions being asked about their interest, students' interest, and the topic of the paper. So my colleague Suchita is going to just send the brochure, the research paper brochure in the chat. So please download that and go through some of the already published papers. And also, if you have any specific questions, we'll try to answer all of them. But in case we aren't, you can be in touch with us, with our team, and we'll schedule a session with you, individual one-on-one session with you. All right. So moving on to the next question. Do research papers that do not have any experiments have a lower scope of having a or being called as a good paper?
So that's not true. As I said, it depends upon the subject and the topic of the paper. And if you've done thorough secondary research in coming up with your paper, that also works well. And again, as I said, there are a number of things to be considered, including what is your topic, how much time is available to you. I mean, I'll give you an example. If you want to do a research paper in astrophysics, for example, it is very unlikely that you will get access to a lab with all those equipment needed to conduct primary research over there. Similarly, if you're a high school student and you want to do research in on viruses, for example, it is very unlikely that you will get access to laboratories which can handle virus. So it depends upon the scope. It depends upon what you're trying to do. And secondary research also leads to excellent papers. So that should not be the concern. whatever topic you are passionate about, whatever subject you're passionate about, decide a good scope of project on that, and that will be worthwhile for your learning as well as for your admission prospects.
Thank you. So yeah, moving to the next question. I already have done a research paper, but it is a literature review on digital twins. Do literature reviews have scope of being published in international journals like IJSR?
I can't specifically answer, I don't know what exactly you've done, but to answer your question, a good literature review definitely has a chance of getting published in international journals.
Thank you. So the next question is, I'm conducting a research on GST slabs in India, focusing on both the existing GST and the new reforms that are yet to come. How can I construct a concise framework for my research?
So that's a good question. I think the question here would be, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to see that by change of these GST slabs, what happens to the collected GST? That could be one approach. So, for example, the GST reforms that were recently announced, rationalizing the slabs, and I think for many industries, it's a positive. For many industries, some industries, the sin goods industry, it's probably a negative. So you will have to decide what is it that you're trying to accomplish. It's a great topic to research upon. You could probably look at that by this GST reform, does it create a kind of a stimulus for the overall Indian economy? That could be one approach. Or you could try to estimate that how much of a stimulus can this GST reform mean for certain industries like two-wheeler industries or four-wheeler but non-luxury, etc. So definitely this could be a great topic. But as I said earlier during my presentation, you have to decide the scope and you have to change. You have to not look at climate change, but you have to decide the effect of climate change on the rising sea levels on Indian coastal cities. Similarly, if you say GST reform, it is too broad. But if you want to look at the expected results of GST reform on the two-wheeler industry in India, that's a fantastic way to put it. That's how you can decide the right topic.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, how can we join this program? Okay, so I would like to answer that. So you already have the number in the chat. You can connect with us. Like Vivek said, we would like to understand more about your interest, your requirements, and then we will go ahead with the process. So we would like to have a discussion offline after this session with you as well, and then we can take it further from there. So Suchita, if you can just share the number once again in the chat, that would be helpful. All right. So the next question is the subject global perspective needed to research these topics? Should we study GP? Should we study GP from grade 8? Okay.
I'm sorry, Abhishek, I didn't understand the question.
So I think the question is, there is a subject called global perspective. Is there a
Okay.
requirement to study that subject in order to do a research?
So it depends on what you're planning to do your research in. So I assume if you're asking about global perspectives, probably you're thinking about a project in international relations or probably in political science. So if you think it depends on the subject. I mean, you should have some base in the subject. And see, this is one of the things we tell younger students that maybe your grade 9 and your grade 10 are a good time to participate in some of the competitions, some of the essay competitions, etc., which are conducted by London School of Economics or Oxford or UC Berkeley or UPenn, because that gives you a flavor of the kind of essays you have to write. It also gives you a flavor for formal writing. Now, depending on the subject you want to finally write your paper in, it's always useful to have some background in that subject because you don't want to be attending a lecture session with a PhD mentor who will be lecturing you about the topic. That is not the best use of your time for these papers.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, I'm currently studying in IB year one. On top of extended essays and IA, is it necessary to do more research, or is doing EE or IA enough?
So, great question. It depends on your objective. So, for example, the extended essay that you're doing, that is a part of your IB curriculum. And that is a property of the IB till such time that you complete your diploma and you awarded your diploma. So let's say somebody who has completed the IB diploma this year, for example, they can definitely submit their extended essay to the universities this year as a part, or they can publish their extended essay in a journal uh, subsequently. But till such point, you have not completed your IB diploma, you should probably not, you're not allowed to talk about your extended essay outside the IB. It is property of the IB till that time. So if you're planning to look at universities and show them your interest in economics or psychology or let's say political science or mechanical engineering or biochemistry, a research paper is actually very useful because it's your property. It is something that you can submit to different universities, the paper itself. And when you're answering their prompts about an intellectual experience which shows your curiosity, you can talk at length about what are the challenges you encountered, why did you undertake that research, and what did you gain as a result of that project.
Thank you, Vivek. So the next question is, does doing multiple papers but without a mentor helpful?
So it can be helpful. So again, let me answer this question. If you think about UK, for example, the UK statement of purpose, you have so many words. So maybe you can talk about two papers over there. And a large number of papers is not as helpful. What is more helpful is doing some in-depth work and being able to talk about that. Because if you list down that, okay, I did these 7 papers without explaining what you did in all 7, it is not going to look as impressive. It will just sound like a list of things. Whereas if you write about one or two of them and you talk in a little bit more detail about what you did, what were your learnings, what were the challenges you encountered, that shows a greater passion for and a greater understanding on your part. Now let's think about US for a moment. So when you apply to US on Common App, you can submit up to 10 activities. Now, theoretically, you can submit all 10 of them as research, but that may not be the best idea. So what may be better and what we see students being successful with is submitting a mix of activities. So there should be something in community service. There should be something in leadership or initiative. There is something which shows, let's say, research or any makers project where you make something. So showing a better mix of things is better. So if you have the knowledge in the subject that you can work on something and create a high quality paper yourself, sure, I mean, it would be, that's good. But generally, even high school, not just high school, even college students, master's students and PhD students ultimately work under a mentor because they're trying to understand a new subject and topic which they don't have complete knowledge of. So I would say in general, working with a mentor, working with a good mentor should definitely allow you to do much better quality project than what you will accomplish yourself.
Okay, thank you so much, Vivek. Uh, so we'll take two, three more questions in the interest of time. We already, I see a lot of questions. So I, apologize if we are not able to take your question, and I request you to get in touch with us. The number is there in the chat, and we'll be able to help you out. So moving on to the third last question of the day. Do projects such as making AI models, apps, or digital simulation count as a research project? If so, then how do you write a result or a discussion and conclusion section in the research paper?
So definitely you could use So AI model simulations, or let me just see the question once.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, Abhishek? Actually, I can't see it.
Yeah. The question is, do projects such as making AI models, apps, or digital simulations count as a research project?
Understood. It definitely does. In fact, in our brochure, there's some examples of simulations and AI-based models that students have created. I'll give you an example. I think that will help you understand this. One of our students in Mumbai recently, actually earlier this year, worked with a professor on a part of AI known as reinforcement learning. And what he did was he established a pair trading strategy for different stocks in the Nifty. So he would take two shares in Nifty, and then he would implement a pair trading strategy using those two shares. And he used different methods. He used different techniques which are available in AI to develop this. And he published his paper. If that example is there in our brochure. And what he also did is he has been tracking the performance of his trading strategy versus the different indexes and versus the mutual funds that publish their results. And he has been telling me that for the last, I think it's about 3 months now, he has routinely been outperforming pretty much all of the established mutual funds. So yes, you can definitely write a paper about how you experimented, how did you come up with your conclusions, and then after publishing your paper, you can continue running the simulation and testing, back testing over time, and seeing how you're performing in the real world with actual money. So the same thing is true for most of the simulation-based projects. You could write a paper about how you arrived at your results, how did you create your model, and then even after the paper is over, you can continue with the simulation and continue publishing your results.
Okay. So the next question is the second last question we will take. How many research papers written is a good amount to stand out in the top college admissions in the US?
So there is no single answer here. We have seen a few students who have done multiple papers. I think, see, the approach should not be to write it just for the college admissions. If you are passionate about the subject, maybe after doing one or two papers, you may feel that okay, now I have acquired enough knowledge and I've acquired some learning as to how to write a paper. So you may want to do more things. I would say in general, for the top universities, we see students do at least two papers. Some students who have made it to top universities have done a lot more. But strictly speaking, the third, fourth, fifth paper was not really from a uh, admissions perspective. They really wrote it because they were clear that this is what they want to do later on.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay to do a research paper in grade 8? I'm very interested in doing a research paper.
So I think what I would suggest, first of all, thanks for your interest. I would suggest that take a look at the brochure, and depending on the subject, you may not have enough knowledge in grade 8 to write a good paper. So this is a good time to do certain online courses. There are a number of free courses on Coursera where you can develop some knowledge about the subject. This may also be a good time to participate in some essay competitions. Uh, and I think normally for most students, the research papers work well after their grade 10. That's probably the best time. In some cases, if you have strong exposure to programming, mostly in computer science, sometimes the project work well after class 9th. Grade 8, I would say, is a little early for writing a formal paper.
Okay, maybe one more question. The student is asking, if I conduct an experiment about teenage children that are that is done by some psychologist, then will it help my application or resume to stand out, and can my research paper be published?
Let me see the question. If I conduct an experiment about teenage children that are done before by some psychologists, then will it help my application or resume to stand out? And can my research paper is published or not? I think your question is that if you do something which has already been done by some psychologist or some researcher uh, before you have done it, will that help you? Can that still be published? And will that be helpful or not? So I think if you want to do experiment on teenage children, I would assume that the subject of interest is psychology. And I mean, you're saying that by some psychologists. So you should definitely do secondary research and see what work have others done in that field. And then see, there is no point of duplicating what somebody else has done, but you could definitely look at what they have done and use that as a starting point. And then maybe you add something additional to that. I mean, for example, there are some recent research papers that we've seen in psychology and neuroscience. In one of them, the student conducted experiments on her classmates to see the effect of TikTok on their cognition and their memory. Uh, Now, obviously, there is some work that has been done in the field, but maybe not so much for particularly for TikTok and how that affects your memory and cognitive skills. So it is definitely useful to be aware of what others have done, use that as a starting point, and maybe you may not find something that others have done in the field, and it should be possible to get it published so long as you've designed a good experiment and you've published a paper which stands up to peer review.
Okay, so thank you so much. With this, we come to the end of the webinar. And in case your questions, we were not able to take your question, please feel free to get in touch with us.